let's talk about frozen rail shots. And I know many players are struggling with those type of shots, but in this video, I'm gonna exactly show you where you have to aim with no spin, and I'm also going to show you how you have to adjust with left and right spin if you wanna make that shot. But first of all, let me show you where you exactly have to aim or where the contact point has to be. Because in the best case, when the cue ball arrives at the object ball, you're hitting the rail and the contact point on the object ball at the very same time. This is very important. If you accomplish that, then the object ball is basically on a string, travels exactly along the rail. First case. Second case is you're hitting too fat. This means the object ball is coming, and as you can see, we have a tiny bit of space between the rail and the cue ball. This means the object ball is gonna be pushed into the rail. And of course, it can't go into the rail. This is why it's immediately coming out like this. In the best case, you still can make that shot if you're hitting soft enough. And of course, if the object ball is close to the pocket on those type of shots, of course, it gets more tricky if you're a bit off. And what is the third case? Of course, if you can hit it too fat, you can also hit it too thin. This means the cue ball comes, hits the rail first, then bounces out like this. And here you can see all of a sudden you have the same contact point as when you were hitting too fat. So it's very difficult to spot if you actually were hitting too thick or too fat just on the reaction of the object ball. Because what happens here is the cue ball comes, bounces out, once again pushes the object ball into the rail, and the object ball comes immediately out like this. So the only real way to spot that is by the cue ball's reaction. So if you're not certain how you exactly hit that object ball too fat or too thin, you can always look at the cue ball's reaction. So let me show you in the first case what happens if I'm hitting the ball too thin. So I'm hitting rail first here. And you can see how much the cue ball travels because it has more speed left because it touches the object ball very thin. When it's basically coming from that direction, it just grazes a tiny bit of the object ball. What happens if you're hitting too fat? So let's set up the same shot and now watch what the cue ball does. If you're not hitting too thin, but actually too full, we were still able to make the shot in that case, but you can see the cue ball is reacting completely differently. And of course, if you're a bit off, as I mentioned, if the object ball is very close to the pocket, you still have a bit of margin. So let's play the shot once again and hit it perfectly. This means, remember, we're hitting the cue ball and the object ball at the very same time. Then it looks like this. Okay, this is how you have to aim that shot when you're using no spin. But what happens if you're using spin? First of all, if you're using inside spin, which is left spin in that case, so that kind of spin, hopefully you can see that, and you're hitting the object ball perfectly where you always want to hit it, cue ball at the rail and the contact point on the object ball at the same time, then everything is fine. But what happens if you just hit a bit earlier now? This means you're hitting the rail. Here you have the advantage that the cue ball is spinning like this. And of course, it grabs on the rail and it wants to go towards the object ball. So by using inside spin on that shot, you actually have a higher chance even if you're far off, because of course the rail also compresses a bit. And then the spin, the left spin, brings the cue ball to the object ball. This is why very often when I, for example, have, let's say, a money ball like this. So let's imagine this is 9-ball, 8-ball. This is the final ball. I always like to play that with inside spin because it higher my chances. And here, from the cue ball's reaction, you could immediately see, or maybe even hear, that I hit the rail first, but I was still able to make the shot. So my margin for the contact point is just a bit bigger if I'm using that inside spin. All right, so how do we adjust our aiming when you're using inside spin? So let's take this position. And of course, we're going to use left spin, which is inside spin. Then we want to make the cue ball go to here, and then back out for the two. It's very important if I'm hitting rail first, I'm going to have a different cue ball's path. I might even hit a lot closer to the pocket, to the corner pocket. I might even scratch compared to hitting the object ball first, then the cue ball is gonna go to here. Very important. You can always see on the cue ball's reaction if you hit too fat or too thin. Now, how do we adjust if I wanna play this with left spin? Well, first of all, you gotta understand that we're hitting pretty hard or a medium to hard speed. This means with left spin, the cue ball, of course, is pushed a bit to the right. And this means, of course, we have to aim a bit fuller, a bit thicker, because the cue ball is gonna be pushed to the right, and then we hit the right contact point on the object ball. Of course, this depends on your cue, how much deflection your cue has. I, for example, using a J. Flowers SMO shaft, doesn't have a whole lot of deflection. This means I'm not hitting that full, I'm just adjusting a tiny bit, then a tiny bit of deflection will push the cue ball to the right, and we should have a pretty good chance to make that shot and get position on the two ball. Just like that, you can see cue ball comes around, maybe a bit too soft for comfort. Here would be ideal, but this is basically how you aim those shots. Let me play that once again with inside spin. Makes the shot easier. I'm aiming a bit fuller. Left spin, want to bring the cue ball around. Just like that. Was a bit dangerous with the side pocket and with the corner pocket, so maybe a bit too little left spin, but we ended up in prime position. Let me play that in real quick with no spin here. Did you see? The free ball went a bit off the rail. This means I didn't hit the ball ideally. But how do you adjust your aiming when you're now further away from the balls? Because of course, this here is pretty close. How do you adjust if you want to have the same result, but you're so far away? You can see this is a total different story now. So I have to hit a tiny bit harder, this is true, but not that much. So this time I don't want to aim too full, because what happens now is the cue ball is going to deflect, of course, to the right, but now the cue ball also has time to curve back to the left. So in that case, if I would hit super hard, really hard, that the cue ball has no time to curve back, I can still aim the same, but I'm not hitting super hard, but just a medium to hard speed. This is why I now have to consider that the cue ball is going to curve a bit to the left, just a tiny bit. So now, once again, depending on your cue deflection, on the speed you're playing, and your elevation, you pretty much, I can, for example, aim pretty much to the true contact point on that shot and can still make it. Of course, maybe a bit too hard. No, we can still see that two ball. Okay, now let's try to get a position on that free ball. So here I'm gonna play low right. I wanna bring the cue ball basically to here and then back to here, and I have to hit pretty hard because I don't have a whole lot of angle. So how do I have to adjust my aiming if I'm not using left spin now, but right spin, so outside spin? Well, it's basically the same principle, just reversed. Now, if I'm hitting hard, the cue ball deflects, of course, with the right spin a bit to the left, and this will mean I have to aim it a bit thinner. The right spin pushes the cue ball back to the left, and then in the best case, I'm hitting the perfect spot on the two ball. This is a tricky shot though, because I have to hit really hard. I don't want to use maximum right spin here, just a tad, and see if we can pull that off. Of course, the harder you're hitting, the smaller the pocket also becomes, because with a soft speed, if you hit here, it can drop. With a very hard speed, if you hit that point, it can rattle out of the pocket, or in the worst case, just hang in the pocket. This is a tricky shot that I would usually play with that inside spin, because it's a bit easier to aim, as I mentioned, but we're gonna play it the other way. So low, touch of right spin. I'm aiming a bit thinner here, a bit more to the right. That was a foul. And I completely missed the shot. So let's do it once again. Of course, that happens. This was completely off. And I was focusing so much right now on being a good cameraman that I don't really spot it if this was too fat or too thin. So let's do it again. That was way too much action, and we left ourselves in a really, really awkward spot. So let's try to do it again. But you can see this shot is so much more difficult to judge, not only to aim, but also to judge, especially with that little angle. Let's give it a couple of more tries. Not that much low on the cue ball now. That was better. Oh, just hit the point of the side pocket. So a really, really tricky shot. And just to show you the advantage of that high and inside spin shot, let me show you if I'm playing it now with just high, trace of left spin, aiming a bit more to the left, a bit fuller now. You can see, even though we're still far away, this is way better. We will always have kind of a shot here. So this is so much easier to play the shot with that high inside compared to that low outside. Just gonna give it one more try to see if we can pull it off. But this is a low percentage shot that I would only take on if I had no other chance. This is very important. Otherwise, most of the time, the inside spin shot is always easier. Yeah, you can see once again, it got away from me. It's very, very difficult to judge. Here, by the way, I wouldn't use any inside spin, but just a high ball because I'm on the rail. And with the inside spin, you can see my tiny bit elevated. And what happens? I will completely miss the shot if I'm elevating. Okay, this is the theory about those rail shots. If you want to practice this, what you could do is give yourself that kind of drill. Maybe you can also place balls here and then try to maybe clear all those free balls with the inside spin. So where you're coming around like this, you want to have enough angle on the two ball. Once again, a bit too little angle, but it's still fine. Here, maybe just a trace of inside. Because if I'm adding too much inside, the cue ball is gonna end more like here. So you can see like this. You can also add inside here. Just gives you, once again, as I mentioned, more margin for error on the object ball, on your actual aiming point. And then you can repeat the whole process just like that. And then play the other path where we're going with low right. And of course, this is so much more difficult to judge because the balls are frozen. The outside spin gives you less margin, actually. Missed that shot. Also, you can see once again, I probably have to work on those shots. Once again, hit a bit too hard. So if you're in practice, set this shot up again and work on it. And of course, it makes a very, very big difference if the object balls are frozen or if they're just a bit off the rail. Then this one is much easier. If the ball is off the rail, I don't even have to hit that low. You can see that's so much easier to judge already, just if the ball is a bit off the rail. So you can see a tiny, tiny bit of a difference in object ball's position will make a huge difference on how difficult or easy a shot is to execute, and also make a difference on which path I'm actually using. So low right, I'm playing here, by the way, with a speed where I'm not adjusting to the left or to the right. So I'm playing a speed. By the way, this was a bit too fat. I saw that on the cue ball's reaction. But here I was playing with a speed where the deflection to the left and the deflection to the right and the curve to the left were canceling each other out. Okay, let's play the two ball. Once again, very difficult. In a real match, I would play that with inside, not this way. And you can see I scratched. So I definitely have to work on those shots, but they're awfully difficult, lower percentage than the inside spin shot. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments.